Now. So good afternoon, everyone. Thanks very much for coming along. My name is Tim. I'm a learning designer in the Faculty for Health, Medicine and Behavioral Sciences. And today's session workshop is going to be on using AI, fun and games for everyone, to build robust multiple choice questions, quality at scale for quizzes and exams. The lens through which I want you to consider this all is not only summative assessment, but also formative. So it might be an INSPIR-run summative exam, very, very formal, but it could also be used to generate MCQs for a formative H5P or an in-class activity with MCQs. So hopefully this will help take a little bit of the load off what is generally a very arduous task in creating multiple choice questions. I will just mention that the slides will be available after the session, and the slides have embedded links to the PDFs that I'll also share during the session. So first of all, I'd like to make an acknowledgement of country. I'm joining from the lands of the Yuggabeh people, but I also work on St. Lucia campus, the lands of the Yuggera and Turrbal people. And as with UQ, acknowledging the traditional owners and the custodianship of the lands on which we meet, learn and study, paying respect to ancestors and their descendants, continuing that cultural and spiritual connection to country, noting that UQ always has been a place of learning, which is really cool. So the other statement I'd like to just mention to you now is a statement of inclusion. Please participate today in whichever way works best for you. You might want short breaks, standing up, using fidgets or devices and assistive technology, go for gold. If you've got any inclusion needs, please pop those into the chat, but we're all online, so hopefully that's mostly covered. Cameras are completely optional, of course. Feel free to turn it off if that's more comfortable for you. And today I'll ask you occasionally to participate a little bit with the Zoom reaction tools. So they're down the bottom of the Zoom toolbar. And if you give that a click, you might see the clap or react and thumbs up. If you could have a crack now, just click react and give me a thumbs up or a clap or, you know, the almighty love heart, a few things there. I can see lots of emojis popping up in the gallery. That's awesome. The other feature that I'd like you to, if it comes up and if it's relevant today, you could use the react buttons to use the non-verbal feedback buttons. So there's the green tick for yes, the red cross for no. If you ever go up popping one of those up now, the emoji react buttons pop up for 10 seconds and then they disappear. But the non-verbal feedback buttons, they pop up, they stay on screen. So when you're in the gallery view, you can see how many people have popped up those reactions. So you could use those for an online multiple choice. A, use the green tick. B, use the red cross. C, use the go faster. D, use the go slower. And you can interact with participants live. So to dismiss those, you again click the react button and then you deselect the icon that's up on screen. So they're pretty cool. Today, I might ask you to throw a few things into the chat. As you can see, there's a message from Italy Marcoms, and in the chat, you can also hover over a message and you can click the emoji react button and you can respond with emojis to people's chats. So please, at a later point in the session, that might be useful. Foreshadowing, have a go. The Zoom transcript button is down the bottom. If you wish to turn that on, please go for gold. So today's session, the goal is that we will use AI, artificial intelligence or generative AI more specifically, to draft, to critique, to build quality multiple choice questions. MCQs, they're used in summative exams, as I mentioned before. Formative, you might have an in-class activity where you're using multiple choice questions. And we want the questions to be as valid as possible and as meaningful as possible to get us as much information as possible when we're using them. I know how important it is during the fire safety training when it kind of says, you know, if the building is on fire, do you stay in the building or do you leave the building? But I kind of also think that there's not too many people who tick, do you stay in the building? So we can isolate a few principles around multiple choice questions and AI can do some heavy lifting for us, but we still really, really do need the human. Don't forget that part. A little bit of a stretch goal. We might be able to look at an AI prompt that can help build short answer reflective questions. So if you've done a multiple choice question, there might be a way to build in a reflective response. Imagine previously you had a 30% written reflection that would go through Turnitin and Blackboard. And now the fact that students could use AI to do that entire reflection, you might be thinking, how am I going to do a reflection? It could be possible to weave in reflection-based questions that tie to multiple choice questions, but we'll come to that one at the end. But my goal today is hopeful that you will be able to use Gen AI to draft MCQs, that you'll be able to apply some of the core principles that we will discuss on writing MCQs, and that you'll feel comfortable refining AI-generated outputs. And that's really important because the refining part is the part where the human is still necessary. AI is just not going to do everything you want it to do perfectly, so we really, really need that human component. So, hypothetical course number 1 is HMBS 1000, and this course has a learning outcome. And the learning outcome, I put that there because if I've got a multiple choice question, I'm probably trying to target or elicit a particular concept or do something. And I've got what I would say is a problematic MCQ. I'll read out the learning outcome first. It is to explain the physiological mechanisms underlying homeostasis in major organ systems, including cardiovascular, respiratory, and renal regulation. The multiple choice question is, which of the following is not involved in homeostasis? A, the heart, B, the kidneys, C, the lungs, or D, all of the above. This is massively a problematic question. There are a number of reasons why, but please type in the chat if you can identify what might be wrong with this MCQ, or if you'd like to, please use the Zoom raise hand tool. And when you raise your hand, then I can nominate you to verbally give an answer if you'd like. Negative in the question stem. I love that, Alicia. That's right. I mean, like, is there a purpose to the negative in the question stem? If there's a pedagogical purpose to the negative, then that's fair. Paul, absolute legend, mate. Yeah, the learning outcome is explain, but the target of this particular question feels more identify. And Emma Hofstetter, that's so good. That's right. There's a negative in the stem, and then D is all of the above. It's a little bit confusing. Lisa, all of the above is lazy. Yes, I totally agree. No, I will say there may be a case, I'm not sure of one, when it could be pedagogically justified, but generally, I don't think they're a good idea. So if I click here, considerations when you're drafting MCQs. We want to think, does the stem, the first part of the question itself, does it stand alone? Does it make sense? And in this case, it does, yeah. Which of the following is not involved? But is there unnecessary phrasing? And this lumping in of negatives. And negatives, when our options have all of the above or none of the above, it starts to get cognitively confusing. And as Paul pointed out, does the question assess the intended cognitive level? The learning outcome explain, but the question is basically identify. So there's not really much happening in the cognitive sense there. And do the answer options discriminate between levels of understanding? So first, if a student chose heart instead of kidneys, or kidneys instead of lungs, or so on, would that tell me something about their understanding? And I'm in no way, shape, or form a health practitioner or subject matter expert, but no, it wouldn't tell us much in this case. And what's even more problematic is, does anybody know what the correct answer is? Trick question? I say trick question because Emma Hofstetter, there we go. There is no correct answer. This question is wrong. It actually doesn't make sense. The heart, kidneys, and lungs are all involved in homeostasis. So this is one of those scenarios where the question doesn't actually give the student the correct answer to choose from. And so students are like, the heart, lungs, and kidneys are, but the question says not, and we get a few little problems there. So here's a revision to that question. A patient experiences acute blood loss following an injury, which physiological response most directly supports short-term maintenance of blood pressure. Luke, hidden task, absolutely. B is the correct answer, but the stem certainly stands alone. And now we don't have unnecessary phrasing. We've got additional information that is contextually supportive of what we're trying to target. And is this assessing explain? Sure, we've just got to identify one of the four options, but the four options given are explanations. So this is doing a much better job at the cognitive target for what we're intending to get out of the question. And do the answers discriminate between levels of understanding? As a subject matter expert, I might be able to see a student who chooses the sympathetic nervous system over peripheral vasoconstriction and the cardiovascular system, over the renal system, over the respiratory system. That might tell me something about their knowledge. So the question is certainly a lot better. So let's go to another example here. We've got a clinical course, CLIN 3000, learning outcome, analyze patient case information to identify priority clinical concerns and justify appropriate first-line management strategies. We've got another problematic MCQ. What is the best treatment for hypertension? A, ACE inhibitors, B, beta blockers, C, diuretics, and D, calcium channel blockers, and total missed opportunity there for the A, B, C, D. I should have put calcium as C and diuretics as D, but a whole nother story. Would anybody like to pop into the chat or unmute and use the raise hand feature to tell me what might be some problems with this MCQ? No justification. The word best is a bit problematic. Yeah, absolutely. Emma.
Hi. I think because the learning outcome first says analyze patient case information. So it would be a case-by-case basis, but in this question, what case am I analyzing?
That is so true. And again, I just really want to emphasize I'm not a health subject matter expert, but case information, what case information? And as I understand this question, but I am not a specialist with hypertension, there may be case scenarios where these answers might be different. And so it might be the case that you use one then over another in a different case. So some other considerations with MCQs, we want to make sure that the options are mutually exclusive. And in this case, they're not necessarily mutually exclusive because it could depend on the case scenario, which hasn't been given to start. And in this one, it does require analysis of case information because there's a learning outcome, whereas the example doesn't. Is sufficient clinical detail provided to justify one best answer? Mildly infuriating. Oh, yeah, I know. I wish I'd put them in there. I didn't even catch it till the end. So I know, Sarah, I should change them. I'll do it next time round. Here's a revision to that MCQ. As you can see, it's a little bit more to read, but we've now got the case information. A 68-year-old patient with a newly diagnosed hypertension has no history of cardiovascular disease, diabetes, or chronic kidney disease. It's really flagging a couple of those key points that we're looking at targeting for discrimination as a misconception, perhaps. Blood pressure is persistently 155/92, according to current evidence-based guidelines, which is the most appropriate first-line pharmacological management. So the difference in this one, we've got best without any context in the first, but in this one we have current evidence-based guidelines in context of the case. So it's certainly a bit of an improvement. Now you're analyzing patient case, marvelous. Oh, Luke, in the comment there you said, why is best problematic? So best, and I think this is a perfect case, when best isn't given context. Best in what scenario? Again, I'm not a specialist with hypertension, but as I understand it, there might be scenarios where a diuretic may not be the best immediate treatment in the case of hypertension. The problem then is the lack of context. Yes, the problem is the lack of context. According to current evidence-based guidelines, which is the most appropriate first line, if you ask ChatGPT to summarize that, it would probably say the word is best. So you may have noticed from the previous slide and this slide in the bottom right corner in yellow, I put some text saying, please prepare a topic aligned with a course learning outcome that you might use a little bit later in the session to build your own MCQs. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Here are some principles, and by no means an exhaustive list and by no means in order of priority, but just food for thought when creating MCQs. And the one I want to start with is human review. I don't think you can use AI without human review. And the really important takeaway here is I can give you an AI prompt to generate MCQs, maybe really good MCQs. But if you're the subject matter expert, the academic, the course coordinator, the teacher, you get to look at them and determine if they're on point before you deploy them. You could give that AI prompt to the students and say, here, use this prompt. It'll be great for helping you develop some MCQs so that you can practice and prepare. But a student might not know when they get the AI output whether or not these questions are right, whether they are targeting the thing that they're supposed to target. It could be useful in a classroom activity where you get students to use a prompt, build a bunch of MCQs, and then peer feedback and share those MCQs. But the human review part, really, really important. Other parts to just general MCQ design, a clear stem. The question part itself needs to stand alone and make sense. Aligned to an outcome, where we have learning outcomes in courses. Having a question that doesn't have any alignment to a learning outcome, the question begs, why is the question even there? The plausibility of distractors. So a distractor is when you've got options A, B, C, D, and A is the key or the correct answer. B, C, and D are your incorrect options. It's like I mentioned earlier with the fire safety training. If you're in a building and the building is on fire, do you stay in the building or do you leave the building? Who's going to choose stay in the building? It's so obvious. One really good way that I've kind of had experience with testing MCQs is show them to a family member who's not also a subject matter expert like yourselves, perhaps, and ask, can you guess the answers from the question that I've just given you? And if your family or friends can guess and they haven't studied the field, that may be signs of some distractors that are really not plausible, and isolating the correct answer may just be really easy. You want to make sure that the answers are mutually exclusive. That scenario where you've written a multiple choice question, the answer is A, and every single person in the classroom doing it thinks the answer is C. And you're like, no, the answer is A. But then when they make the case and unpack it for you, maybe C is also correct given a particular context. If that context wasn't explored or unpacked, well, then maybe both answers are correct. And if you haven't factored that in when you're doing summative assessment and the different platforms, it can be really difficult to go back. Use the data that you get from platforms, H5P, Inspira, Ultra, etc., and have a look. Are you setting a correct answer, but a really large number of students are always choosing an option that's wrong? Maybe that option needs to be looked at a little bit more carefully to ensure that they're mutually exclusive for all of the other, in reference to all of the others. Cueing, don't give hints in the question. We want to make sure that our MCQs are testing meaningful concepts. We're not looking at just doing trivia. The idea of a good MCQ is not that you'll catch them out on a linguistic framing of the question. And for me, this really rings true of the school year maths, when you're told that you're going to do a maths question, and then you're given a scenario. On the 14th of the 3rd month, 4 friends go down to 2788th Street and they buy 14 ice creams, 12 carrots and 3 apples. Everybody gives one more than the other to the next person. And at 12:30, how many ice creams are left? We're not trying to conceptually trick the learners. We just want to test the concepts of their understanding. Mutually exclusivity point about having something that is also plausible might be a good idea for class-based MCQ quiz where discussion results. Absolutely, absolutely. And the answer is 42. So coming back to that first point, human review. Today, you're going to use AI to build some multiple choice questions, but You just can't take them at face value. You've got to review them. So AI. Won't get too far into this, but just want to let you know that UQ endorses Copilot. That's why when you log into your MyUQ account from MyUQ, when you click Microsoft 365, it takes you to Copilot. Always read the T's and C's, the terms and conditions, when you're looking at all of the other platforms, Claude, Grok, Perplexity, Copilot, ChatGPT, Gemini, and others. Yes, they harvest data, but Copilot has enterprise data protection, EDP. In this sense, there's a question I've been asked, is it okay for us at the university to use AI to build our multiple choice question banks? And my point here is, you might use AI and it might give you a really good start for question number one. And when you've got question number one, you will copy and paste that into Microsoft Word, refine, tweak, and adjust, because it may not be exactly what you're looking for. From one multiple choice, you might generate 100 different ones, and you're going to have to refine them, but that will probably involve a lot of tweaking and changing. From your bank in a Microsoft Word document, that will go into something like Inspira, Blackboard Ultra, maybe even H5P, and then you can run them in a variety of different ways. So are you allowed to do it? I don't think you're not allowed to do it. I think it's a really good way of using the language capabilities of generative AI as it functions algorithmically with a large language model to shuffle words into an order that works really well given the constraints you give it. Really waffly long answer there, but have a play and see where you go. So here's the prompt. This is a PDF, and again, the slides will be made available. And as you can see, as I hover my mouse over this page, it's hyperlinked, so you'll have access. The Scan Me here is the QR code, and I've got to move my little screen around here. Come on, move that over there. And then in the chat, I'll pop a link to the chat there. Now has a link to the file. So the top part of the file tells you what this is. It's a prompt guide. Why would you use a prompt template? There's a bit of blurb as to why you might use one. Down the bottom, really important, prompt with purpose, refine with pedagogy. Why are you prompting? What are you going to get out of using AI that you're not going to be able to get out of doing as a human? I think in the space of multiple choice questions, it's speed. You might be able to generate 20 MCQs along a variety of topics aligned to multiple learning outcomes that when you go back and review, you could cut 10 of them. You might include all of them with a few tweaks and changes here and there. So it can save you some heavy lifting, especially if you're going into the big bank area. So this prompt, the correct answer is always B. Yeah, so when you do use this prompt, it will tell you what the correct answer is. Don't verbatim just pop them in. Remember, alphabetize them A, B, C, D, not A, B, D, C. But anyway, this is a prompt template. It contains a lot of information. Early days of AI in 22 and 23, the more info that you put into a prompt, it really quite struggled. But now things have really caught up. So you can put in a big prompt like this, and it generally, not always, but generally does relatively well. In the PDF document, you'll be copying that text and pasting it into the prompt box, but you're going to want to change the topic in this section here. Add your learning objectives. Is there one learning objective, two learning objectives, 3, 4, 5? Pop them all in if you want to make a big bank. And really importantly, target the cognitive levels that you're looking for. Are you hitting first year? Are you hitting postgrad? Are you looking to analyze, evaluate, explain, or justify? There may be a case for identify, but again, this depends on what you're trying to target. All of these points, as you can read them here, are key things that I think are really important when designing a multiple choice question. It's not an exhaustive list by any means, but it will do a lot of heavy lifting for you. A couple of ones that I want, where's my mouse going? A couple of ones that I want to mention. The avoid negatively worded stems. We're not trying to use MCQs to catch out students. We want to test their conceptual knowledge. If it is necessary, pedagogically valid to include a negative, go for gold. Otherwise, don't use it as a trick. And I can see Luke's comment in the chat here, differentiating across cognitive levels, not necessarily at all. It might be, and this is probably more connected to your learning outcomes or learning objectives. So the verbs that you find in your learning objectives may very well be the verbs that you're trying to target in your prompt. And Jeffrey, I built a Copilot agent and I built a ChatGPT generative pre-trained transformer GPT. And I realized that when you build an agent or when you build a GPT to do this, you take away the heart of sharing the principles with people. And so by giving you the prompt, you've got a gigantic list of the principles that, whether you use AI or not, that are really, really useful to include when you build MCQs. So early days with the GPT, I'm like, this is great. Copy a course in and you're done. But now I think sharing this list, and if you look at the list, great. If you don't look at the list, well, it'll do the heavy lifting for you. Importantly, ensure the question's difficulty arises from the conceptual challenge, not the linguistic or contextual complexity. Again, we're not trying to trick people. And towards the end, I've got, no, where is it? Oh, there we go. Ensure language, examples, and contexts are culturally neutral, unless pedagogically justified that you're trying to, perhaps in a social work scenario, you're looking at cultural nuance, cultural differences. Maybe there is a case for that, but otherwise, it doesn't need any of that woven in. We want to avoid, we want cultural neutrality. Cultural neutrality. At the very end, include a brief explanation for each MCQ to the LOs that they align with, the cognitive levels targeted, and why the distractors are effective. AI doesn't always get it right, and AI's job is to convince you that it has done a good job. Don't trust it, because you're always accountable for the outputs. But this will give you an explanation of why the AI thinks, and I'm anthropomorphizing it by saying it thinks, why the algorithmic model is making the case that it has done what you asked of it. If you disagree with any of the options, for example, option D doesn't look right, simply type option D doesn't look right, and the AI will go and change option D for you. So now it's time for a bit of play. I would like you to use the the Zoom React buttons and give me the green tick if you could. Were you able to access the PDF, and have you now opened the PDF in order to access that text? Oh, that is looking great. I can see some people using the emojis, but they disappear. I can see lots of green ticks. I'll go the opposite way now. If you haven't been able to access that, can you tick the red no from the nonverbal feedback buttons so I can help and chase it up? But I'm seeing green ticks and I'm not seeing any red no's. This is great. Please plug. So copy and paste. Oh, wait. Forgot to show you one more thing. I should share my screen before I do this. I'll quickly share with you. Here's my screen. Can I ask someone to verbally give me a topic, any topic, please? Just unmute and tell me anything that is related to academia in your space. Giraffes. Thank you. Aligned with these learning objectives, tertiary zoology studies. Beautiful. Targets first year, aligned to those cognitive actions. Let's click go from Copilot and see what Copilot does. I clicked the top right corner from Copilot to use the think deeper option. I haven't played with this much, but I also use ChatGPT, and I kind of found it takes longer. I don't really know if the outputs will be any better. Academic giraffes. And there you go, Peter, you mentioned it. If you're guessing the answer, the longer one is often the best one, but it shouldn't be. If we write our questions correctly, they'll all be basically the same length and it won't give any hints, which is what we're targeting. So here we go. Whoop. Giraffe phase 2 link. just going to zoom in on that. I'm not even going to read it. While you're having a look at the Copilot output for the question on giraffes, please, on your end with Copilot or whichever other tool you wish to play around with, pop that prompt in and please copy and paste the MCQ as it came from the AI into the chat. Wow. We're getting into explain, apply, analyze, cognitive levels of explain and analyze. The distractors are effective. This is really good. It's unpacking it for me. Jonathan Dawson, thank you so much. That is awesome. Please pop your MCQ into the chat and everyone have a look at the MCQs in the chat and use the heart if you think the answer is A, the sunnies if you think the answer is B, the hot emoji if you think it's C, and the cold emoji if you think the answer is D. Just trying to see if we can guess those answers. And I'm having a look and I can't guess anything that I've seen come through so far. Oh, Gavin, that's great. Oh, an assessment question. Love that. So I can see a bunch of those questions going into the chat. I can see that a few people have still got the React buttons on. If you want to deselect the React yes or the React no, I think we've only got some yeses on screen. But now, again, if you want to use the green tick, if you've popped your prompt into your AI and you've got an MCQ, can you share with me using the green tick if you think the MCQ is okay? I'm not looking for great, I'm just looking for okay or above. Please use the red cross no if you think the MCQ was just an absolute waste of time, doing no heavy lifting for you. And put a cup of coffee, the I'm away, I'm back icon from React if you think it's somewhere in the middle. Oh, Gavin, thanks. Good that you weaved that into the yellow. Lisa, I mean, sometimes they're really, really garbage. And I do look at that and I'm like, well, you know, in all fairness, is the AI having a difficult time making an academic tertiary level question for giraffe-based savanna environmental adaptations? I mean, we'd hope that it would do well, though. Okay, so I'll flip back to my question here. Actually, I'll go to, and we're going to go to take the exact same prompt and I'm going to use ChatGPT this time. On ChatGPT, and look, in all full disclosure, I'm using the paid version of ChatGPT and I've selected the thinking option. So again, this will be longer. There are many, many Gen AI tools out there. And to be honest, Copilot cops a bit of flack sometimes. I think it's really good in a variety of cases. But if you're finding that Copilot's not giving you what you're looking for, free versions of many of the other generative AI platforms are available. Jump online and have a look. Try the prompt in another AI platform and see if you get a different response. So here we go. We've got some brain adaptation stuff. I really should have gone for something more academic, a little bit more straightforward, but I do like the giraffe idea. Oh, Gavin, this is great. So the problem is that the correct answer is almost always the longest answer when using Gen AI. Great. That is perfect, Gavin. I'm going to be really cheeky here, and I'm going to copy and I'm going to paste your response into AI. So basically, I'm saying, hey, the correct answer is almost always the same. What are you doing? And that'll hopefully address the problem. But yeah, A was a little bit longer, targeting some stuff I don't know anything about. It'll have a crack at rewording them. So whenever you get an option that doesn't work, tell the AI this option doesn't work. Okay, reliable fixes. And it's doing the revised. Here we go. So now we've got the revision, and it's done a relatively good job at keeping them a little bit more simple. Okay. All right. Ooh, come back there. Reading the transcript in the session. So we've got a prompt and we can build some MCQs. Sarah, I really like that. Yell no in capital letters when it messes something up. That works too. Hypothetically, you want to embed some reflection questions. And I have no idea how this would work, whether this would work in summative, whether this wouldn't work in summative. But if you wanted to build in some reflections, you could say, take what I've got here as my multiple choice question and then build me a reflection question. So I'm going to share with you now another prompt, but I will have to go here. There we go. This is a huge prompt, but as a reflection one. We've got a QR code to give you a link. The slides have a link to the PDF as well, and I will pop that into the chat now so you can access it. We've got context, the task, and the output format. So I'll break that down a little bit. The context is to say first, second, third, fourth year, for topic, for example, dentistry, for whichever learning outcomes, again, targeting the learning outcomes. Explaining that the first part of the exam is MCQs, but then we want to build in reflective questions that explain, apply, allow students to explain, apply, and think. Then the task from AI says, that we're asking if AI says, build 2 to 3 questions without the model answers at this stage. All of the information we want to kind of come out of that, and this is just a hypothetical, you can add to this, tweak this if you will. For each question, give a suggested word range, give a suggested mark value. I'd imagine that in a multiple choice question, you can give it 1 mark or 2 marks or 3 marks if you think it deserves to be weighted more heavily or all weighted the same. But when it comes to reflection, there may be a case in a short answer where one answer gets full marks and another answer gets part marks and another answer gets 0 marks. All of that is really importantly dependent on how you word the question for transparency's sake to ensure that the student knows all the information they need to add. And the longer you get in word count into the hundreds of words, for example, you start entering the territory of needing a rubric and multiple criteria. And we may not want to go there. We may want very quickly to have a really simple marking schema that says they get 3 marks if they have all these 3 elements, 2 marks if they only have these 2 elements, and 1 mark if they have that element. Again, the human yourself gets to make the call if that's doing what it needs to do, or if you just want to give it 1 mark. The output format, we're giving a bit of information there on what the output format should look like. And importantly, and I realized that I had forgotten to include this as many times as I played with it, when I use this prompt, it almost always says, so the question, multiple choice question with A, B, C, D, A was correct. How is A different from C? And I'm like, come on, don't give the students the answer. So I just wrote don't give the students the answer to the previous MCQ in this short answer question. And I can't, just a brief moment. Go back to the share. And let's go to a multiple choice question here. And I'll paste that all in. And we are saying that it is our first year giraffe for zoology. And the learning outcomes as above. And we want to say here, use the MCQ that you just generated, and then click go. So please now have a go at the MCQ you just generated. Pop in the reflection prompt and see if you can get some reflective questions and comment as to whether they're good or not. I'm just having a look at the chat here. So is it capable of Luke, are you saying, is it capable of writing the reflection task? Here we go. So it's doing exactly what I said. It's saying option A, best addresses. So what I want to say here is, don't give the answer to the MCQ above, rather ask for reflection without giving hints. It's one of the problems with AI. It really doesn't force you to type properly because it doesn't matter. The link between the task and the reflection and learning outcome. Yeah, I think it's a really important part of the human review, Luke. The question in the chat is, can AI have the link between the task and the reflection and the learning outcome with so much going on? Does AI have the sophistication to do that? I wouldn't say that it has the sophistication to do that, but back to that need for human input, it can be a good starting point. And I don't know what's going to happen to the written reflection as a summative task that has great value, but with the ability for a student to pop it into AI instantly. Is there another way to more securely get some information on student, get some student reflection in a way that we can capture it? And asking a student to write a 1,000 word reflection in a lecture theatre isn't going to work. But popping in some reflection-based questions that are aligned to multiple choice questions, has other problems. The time needed to write a short answer reflective question is greater than answering an MCQ. They've answered an MCQ, the activation of prior knowledge is there, but if they got the wrong answer, then that could trigger them to give the wrong answer in a reflection. So by no means is this a hard and fast, this always works. But it was a conversation with another academic who said, is there a way that we can do this? And we unpacked the idea of using reflective questions post MCQ. Explain and justify why the option you selected best addresses the challenges, which is a good one. In your answer, refer to the specific mechanisms. So if the justification showed that they understood the processes that they were talking about, but they had in fact chosen the wrong answer for the MCQ, they might actually still get the points for the justification. They might have made a misunderstanding that the case scenario didn't clarify a point, and so they've taken it from a different lens and given a reason for that different lens. choose any option, identify one assumption or limitation. So this is great. This is whether you choose the correct answer or whether you choose any of the incorrect answers, identifying an assumption or a limitation and getting their feedback. And again, giving them a word count of 60 to 80 words. Maybe it's 3 marks and you give a couple of marks as to how many points they can identify. Point is, AI might not write your exam for you, but if you have the need to make a greater bank of questions in your MCQs for summative assessment, even for formative class engagement, it can do some heavy lifting for you. Would this work for creating deferred exams? So that's a really good point. I think when it comes to exams, if you have written an exam and you deliver that exam with each and every question from the exam bank being delivered in one sitting, you don't have a spare set of questions lying around. And maybe those questions have been carefully written, well thought out, and took a lot of time. But once you've deployed them, you can't use them for the reset. So maybe AI can help you take your bank of questions and expand it so that you can use the pool function where you can have, and not to go into too great depths, but you might be able to make a case for having easy questions, medium questions, and difficult questions. And you might be able to say, in my exam, I'm going to have a pool of MCQs, maybe 20 or 30 easy, 20 or 30 medium, 20 or 30 difficult. And when I do the exam, each student is going to get 15 questions from each pool. And then you run that. And there's a lot of work to be done in assessment in that space. So I'm not saying that AI has done all the heavy lifting for you, but it's certainly going to save you time writing questions if you get it doing the things you need it to do for the questions that you need it to do. So my question to everyone now is, where else could Gen AI support assessment design? And please pop that, any thoughts in the chat, and use the emoji reactions if you notice any that are quite useful or that you might want to use in future. Thanks, Judith. Has anyone experimented with using Gen AI in assessment, in the assessment design space so far? Have you had any luck? Rubric design, Alicia, 100%. Rubric design, that's my space. I love that space. Using AI to help you with a rubric can help you craft clear, aligned criteria, can help you with more objectively worded descriptors across the bands. Do you recommend disclosing use of AI to generate MCQ banks to students? This is a really, really interesting point. I think that a lot of the ethical concerns come back and can be tied to accountability. In this space, I personally lean towards no. I don't think we have policy in this space at the moment from UQ as to whether we should or shouldn't. But in this space, I think if you are a subject matter expert saying, here's what I want AI to write questions for me on, and you give it an alignment to learning outcomes, you give it some specific cognitive topics that you want it to capture, and you're going to review that at the end, you're using a computer-based algorithmic model that takes a whole bunch of words to shove them together in the way that you've asked them to be shoved together, and then you review that. You could put a comment to say that AI was used in part to assist the development of the questions in this bank, but I don't think that adds value to the student experience. Personally, at the moment, I'm not sure. I don't think it adds value to the student experience, and not that trying to get out of cans of worms, but if it opens a can of worms and students say, you just wrote my test with AI, we want to say, no, it was used as a guide to start a bunch of questions that were then reviewed by a human, and all of the distractors were adjusted and all of the stems were adjusted, but I don't have a correct answer in line with policy. modeling transparency and ethical and effective use is really, really important. So in slides, for example, I would certainly be having, and this is probably a case where I was saying before, you could give the prompt to students and ask students to generate their own questions. And you could say, this is using AI to generate these questions. And you might find that some of those are good, some of those are bad, but then you'd have the discussion around why AI worked well and where AI did things badly. Optimal number of responses in an MCQ. So if there's one key and three distractors, sorry, if there's one correct answer only, I've read research in the last few years that suggests 3 options with 1 correct answer is very functional. And some of those studies point to the fact that when you have 4 options in a multiple choice question, one of them being the correct answer, that statistically, the one that is least chosen is always least chosen consistently. And if it's always the one that no one ever chooses, does it serve any purpose as a plausible distractor? If it's not plausible, if it doesn't function well as a distractor, then don't include it. And if you're building an MCQ and you've come up with 3 options, one of them is the correct answer, and you can't think of a 4th, I don't think there's need to include a 4th. But this is probably field and context and discipline dependent. So no hard and fast rule, but I think that, so 5, yeah, I think focusing more on the quality of plausible distractors that target common misconceptions is going to give you more discriminating evidence when you review the results. Jeffrey. Yeah, fair call. Thank you, Jeffrey. So you might find that AI could help you with case scenarios, rubrics, inquiry-based prompts. I think it does a really good job with the inquiry-based learning side of things. Feedback templates, question banks, of course, but really importantly, the final message I want to leave you with is the idea of accountability. Alignment, we want it to be constructively aligned. If there is a question that has no connection to a course learning outcome, it begs, why is that question even there? Accuracy, we want to make sure that we've got the right answer. We've identified it's the correct answer. And we don't always look for what is the correct answer. We want to also ensure that what we have chosen as distractors are incorrect because they are serving the purpose of distracting, but also they are not correct. So mutually exclusive from the correct answer. And human oversight, it can't be done. You just can't, as we saw from some of the Insta plugged in responses, you can't just plug it in and go, great, it's written me 50 questions and walk away. You really, really have to review those outputs. But that, the accountability, alignment, accuracy, oversight, non-negotiables when you're using AI. So I will now throw it out. Are there any particular questions, or what do you think is your key takeaway? What are you going to use? Are you going to use AI? Yeah, that's the question. Are you going to use AI to generate multiple choice questions in the future? Awesome. Have a crack at it. With care. Most definitely use them with care. So I am, again, a learning designer with HMBS, and that means that you'll probably find me on one of the UQ pages. Thank you very much for coming along today, and hope you have a wonderful afternoon and rest of Teaching and Learning Week. Peter's popped a survey in the Zoom channel there, so please pop your thoughts. And thank you all very much for coming along today.